Okay, welcome everybody to the Data Space Alliance Ireland webinar. As you may be aware, the Data Space Alliance Ireland is all about trying to stimulate the local Irish ecosystem in terms of participants and people that might have an interest in data spaces, people that want to learn more about them and want to learn what's happening with our common European data spaces. So very much a community that comes together to share experiences. Today, we have a great talk from Adrian Murphy, who's actually a digital data curator at Europeana, who's going to talk about the experiences that they have in working with cultural heritage data and what kind of role a data space plays with that. Our moderator today, our host, is going to be Rafiq. So Rafiq, I'm going to pass over to you, and you might give us a little bit of context on data spaces for people that are not familiar with it. So I'll pass over to you, Rafiq.
Thanks very much, Ed. Can you hear me well?
We sure can, Rafiq, yes.
Just give me 1 second. Okay. All right, shall I share my slides or this is okay, perfect. Right. Again, welcome everyone to this webinar, and I'm Rafiq Al-Haq. I'm Senior Research Fellow here at Insight University of Galway. And this is our, I think, the second year of the webinar started. Our primary focus of organizing this webinar is to increase the awareness of data spaces within and across the Irish community. So just to give you a bit of like introduction, what exactly is the data spaces where the concept was first born, and what exactly is happening currently at this stage. Very briefly, the idea of data spaces go along with the idea of European data strategy that was basically, let's say, that was initiated by the European Commission. Now, the primary goal of this European data strategy was to create a single data market within European Union territories. And when we say data market, it essentially can be, for instance, like industrial data, open data, and etc. etc. The main focus is to ensure that the data freely flows within the territories, within the companies, within and across the companies, within and across the organization, regardless private or public organization. So that's basically the large vision. To realize that particular vision, what Commission is doing currently, it actually started in the year of 2021, and ever since they are funding different projects, different sort of like projects related to technology, related to building data spaces, etc. And also, let's say that focusing a lot on the regulatory aspects, is that if the data flows, what are the different sort of like, regulatory aspects needs to be taken care of, as you know, that we have different regulatory framework in place in EU countries, including GDPR, Data Act, AI Act, etc. So in the middle block, if you see it, so you have the data action where this regulatory pieces come in, and you have the cloud action where basically the Commission is funding the project that are primarily focusing on building infrastructure for doing the data processing, for bringing data very close to the AI workloads, and etc. And that's where the Digital Europe program is primarily focusing on at this stage. So these are the activities that they are doing. Now, where the data space comes here. Now, the data spaces, as I was saying, that the vision, to realize the vision, they need to set up the data space. So it's kind of like, things that are primarily focusing on at this stage in a very much like domain. So they're setting up the domain-specific data space. We're calling it European Common Data Space, right? So currently, there are 14 different domain data spaces available, including cultural heritage that you will hear about today, Europeana. It's like one of the oldest one and a very mature data space. And then you have the data space related to finance, and then like you have agriculture, you have data space related to media, etc., manufacturing as well. and the mobility and transportation, then basically tourism, and so on. Now, inside is basically one critical part where we are, like inside Galway, one critical partner of Data Space Support Center. It is once again funded by the Commission. So the Commission wants to set up a support center to support these data spaces, the ones that are already running, the ones that will, like come in future. And this is where the Data Space Support Center comes in. Now, Carmen, you are running the slides, or Ed? Okay, perfect. Now, what exactly data spaces is, to tell you very briefly, is that first of all, it's the framework which ensures the secure and interoperable data exchange between the parties, right, the participants. And it's like, it's reflected on the image. If you see on the image on the right hand side, is that you have multiple different companies, and you consider them. Some of the companies are data providers, some of the companies are data consumers, right? So the companies, they basically participate in data space, and then basically they do the trading between them. Somebody sells, somebody buys. What's the role of the data space here? The middle block, the one, the rounded, a circle shape. So imagine that the companies don't know each other, right? So basically, when they don't know each other, there needs to be a trust that, okay, if I share the health data, then basically I need to make sure that that person will not abuse the data. So you can consider them that they are the ones who act as a guardian angel for, like for the data providers and the consumers. So they ensure that the data is safe, data is not abused. They basically impose all the different sort of regulatory aspects here in the space. That's the framework we're talking about. That's the framework Europeana is specifically designed for instance, like let's say that the culture and heritage. So that's more or less like, let's say that very briefly about the data space. And one last point is, when you are sharing the data, you have to maintain certain, technical aspects as well. For instance, standardization of the data. You have to ensure that the data is good quality, and there is a business model behind as well. So for further information about the data space, I would strongly recommend you could just go to Data Space Support Center. There are loads of materials up there that explains the blueprint, is that what exactly is the data spaces and how they are built, how they are basically, let's say that regulated and coordinated between the different participants of the data. Carmen, can we go to the next slide? So as I was saying, that there are different types of data space. As you can see, that for every domain there are different data spaces. And Data Space Support Center, essentially the project that we're currently working on, and it is supporting these data spaces. Shall we go to next slide? Please just go a bit faster. And the idea here is that, the idea, this is Data Space Support Center. We have 12 core partners. We have a huge network of stakeholders and community of practice who are data spaces, and also the people who are providing the technologies for data spaces. Please do feel free to check the websites, to the portal of the SSC. You'll find a lot of materials up there. We'll skip that. Now, very quickly, what Insight is doing at this stage. Of course, we are very much focused on different, let's say that research to sort of to support the data spaces. But primarily, we are building design principles. That is for the blueprint, which will be released. The third version of the blueprint will be released in Data Space Symposium in the next month. We're working on interoperability, focusing on semantic and syntactic interoperability, technical interoperability within data spaces. We recently also started a new initiative where we are focusing on how to make data space intelligent. So from traditional data space to intelligence, we're working on standardization of different technologies also. We are working with W3C, and there are different initiatives we're involved in, BDVA, ADRA, and Power as well. you can see Professor Edward Kelly has two different books. Those books are basically very nice materials and good materials that you can actually get the understanding of data space. Where Data Space Alliance comes in, the Data Space Alliance for Ireland, as I was saying, that our main goal, the DSI's main goal, is to kind of like create a community and just like to sort of make them aware of the data spaces, make them aware of the community, what basically role of the data space can play for different sectors in Ireland, including the public organizations. The last couple of things is just to invite you in advance. We're going to talk about we're going to organize the next webinar on tourism data space, which is very, very interesting. And a company called Any Solution already is leading that data spaces, and it's basically, let's say, the running data space. I'd like to invite to all of you on 27th of February 2026, the same time to join that webinar. Last but not least, Carmen, if you want to say a few words about the Big Data Value Forum, please, if you can.
Yeah, thanks, Rafiq, for that comprehensive overview. So this webinar the recording will be available later if anybody wants to look at it. But we're very excited to be hosting the European Conference of Big Data Value Forum in Galway, in Ireland, as part of the EU presidency in September 30th and October 1st of this year in the newly opened Dexcom Stadium here in Galway. This is a European conference, brings in people in the data spaces all around Europe. We are looking for local industry, local as in national and local to Galway, but also nationally all across Ireland, north and south. Industry and public sector bodies to get involved, and we will have some really nice events around that in terms of workshops and learning opportunities, as well as the conference being open to people to attend it. So more information on that will be coming over the coming months. But if you want to get in touch and learn more about it, I'm more than happy to chat to anybody about it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Carmen. Yep. So now moving on, I would like to invite Adrian, please. Now the floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me, and I'm going to just share my screen, which I hope you can all see now. So thank you very much for inviting me to speak today about Europeana and the Common European Data Space for Cultural Heritage. I'm currently based in the Netherlands, in The Hague, where it snowed overnight, but originally I'm from Cork. So it's always nice to get a chance to speak to people in Ireland about Europeana. So, moving forward. Today what I'm hoping to do is to introduce you to Europeana and the Common European Data Space for Cultural Heritage. I think from now on I'll just call it the data space rather than the full title, and talk a little bit about how we make it easier for people to use cultural heritage for education, research, creation and recreation. So the understanding of a common European data space is that they make data available for access and reuse, and in a trustworthy and secure environment. And at Europeana, we have existed for longer than data spaces sort of existed, but we share and promote Europe's digital cultural heritage to be used by and enjoyed by everyone for learning, for work, or just for fun. We imagine a cultural heritage sector which is powered by digital technologies and a Europe powered by culture for a resilient, growing economy, to increase employment, to improve well-being, and grow a sense of European identity. So, as I'm sure you know, we are an EU initiative. We have been financially and politically supported by the European Commission since 2008. And over the last few years, we've been at the heart of the Common European Data Space for Cultural Heritage, which the organisation I work for, runs in consortium with others. I'll tell you about that in a moment. So to give a little bit of history, from 2008 we launched, and we were initially a kind of a portal with a big idea to share Europe's cultural heritage, make it easily accessible and found by anyone. then from 2010 to 2020, we saw the rise of Web 2.0. We evolved into a platform where people could discover that cultural heritage and then reuse it as well in a variety of different ways. And then from 2020 onwards, around now, we're part of a new world, the data space. So we're envisioning that data is no longer something we just find and reuse. It's more of a participatory environment where users take an active role. We're no longer just visitors, but participants. We can upload our own stories, identify harmful language, and go straight to the source to find updated data and information from voices that we trust. So the organization I work for is called Europeana Foundation. Our offices are based at the Royal Library of the Netherlands in The Hague, which is where I am right now. We have around 60 plus staff from about 20 different nationalities. And in consortium with 20 plus organizations, we run Europeana, and we are at the heart of the common European data space for cultural heritage. One of those organizations, and a very important part of that, is the Europeana Network Association. This has over 5,700 members. These are people who are professionals who are working in and around cultural heritage. Anything from somebody at the front desk of a museum to somebody who works at a Ministry for Culture to researchers who look at this field. It's a strong and democratic community of experts working in that area, and they're united by a shared mission to expand and improve access to Europe's digital cultural heritage. With that QR code there, you can go to the site where you can join for free, and you'll see the benefits of joining in and so on. Within that network, there are a number of communities. They look at the areas of climate action, communication, copyright, education, technology, impact, and research. So all of these things are part of our work in some way, because all of these things make our work possible. Without a look at copyright, without understanding copyright, we can't necessarily make cultural heritage available. Particularly technology, we can't do that either. But also education is really important to make sure that while we are making this material available, that it is being used for educational purposes, and of course looking at our impact as well. We also have the Europeana Academy, which is at training.europeana.eu, and on there you'll find self-paced courses and instructor-led training, which is aimed at cultural heritage professionals to help build their capacity around digital. Underpinning what Europeana does, there's a large data governance and data modeling aspect. So for many years, we've had the Europeana data model, which we call EDM, and the publishing framework. Both of these are data models and frameworks that work across all cultural heritage data and allow data from many different organizations to be brought together into one source and to be standardized, as Rafik mentioned earlier. That publishing framework also helps our users, because it divides the data into different tiers in terms of quality. So for example, you could think of image size. So something that might be tier 1 might be a very small image, but something that might be tier 4 could be a really high resolution, excellent quality image of a painting. It also looks at the availability for reuse. So something that's a lower tier might be in copyright and it can't be used by other people, but something that's in tier 4 might be public domain and can be used by anyone for any purpose. There's also a number of tiers that look at the metadata quality, so how well an item is described. Underpinning this too, we have the Europeana licensing framework, which is something that we've developed alongside with Creative Commons and a consortium called rightstatements.org to make sure that when organizations are sharing their data with us, that it applies to one of, I think it's 14 different rights statements. So not that everything is free for all, but there's actually kind of some standardization to this. And any cultural heritage provider that is working with Europeana, they agree to our DEA, the Data Exchange Agreement. So within the data space, there are many different tools and things that allow us to make this happen. So it's not just a website that you see at the front, that's kind of like the tip of the iceberg, but there are a large number of organizations, tools, processes, resources, and so on that allow this to happen. One of the most important, I think, is our network of aggregators. That's around 40 different organizations that are based all across Europe. These people will help us bring the data onto Europeana, the Europeana website and our APIs. So within those 40 aggregators, we don't have a one-to-one direct connection as Europeana Foundation with every organization whose data is on Europeana, but the aggregators often do. So they're based on a national level. In some countries, there are national aggregators, for example, in Italy, in Finland. Some are based on a thematic level, so for example, fashion or archaeology, and some are based on a domain level, for example, libraries or archives or museums. Within Ireland, our very trusted partner is the Digital Repository of Ireland. They are the national infrastructure for Ireland's social and cultural heritage. They curate, preserve, and provide sustained access to Ireland's humanities and digital and social science data, and largely are led by the Royal Irish Academy, Trinity College Dublin, and Maynooth University, although previously I know some other organisations have been involved in there too. So, when we talk about collections data, what exactly do we mean? With the main way you'll access this data is through Europeana.eu. This is our main website where you'll find inspiring cultural heritage data from all across Europe, from around 3,500 plus different organizations, all at your fingertips. You can search and browse more than 60 million records and discover engaging stories and find educational materials. You can also access a lot of this data via APIs. We have several APIs that each do a slightly different thing, but they are all available, and there's information on our website about how those can be accessed. So within Europeana, anyone can access more than 60 million cultural heritage items, and 81% of those are available for some kind of reuse. So the themes and collections are as broad as you can imagine. Cultural heritage is not something that is a very easy thing to define, and therefore the themes and collections that we work with are as broad as what anything that could be considered to be culture, from archaeology, art and fashion, all the way to photography, sport and World War I. There's something sort of for everybody on Europeana.eu. So to give you some examples, there are over 20 million openly licensed artworks, manuscripts, photographs, natural history specimens, and a lot more. In the audiovisual area, there's over 50,000 openly licensed videos showing old news reports and heritage topics, classical music, birdsong, and more. There are not as many, but a growing number of openly licensed 3D archaeological objects, heritage sites, monuments, and more. And to give some examples from Ireland, there are around about 110,000 items in Ireland from about 30 different organisations, including the Chester Beatty Library, who shared manuscripts and other objects. The Hunt Museum in Limerick, which have a very eclectic collection ranging from archaeological items to fashion. And some other Irish collections include local and community initiatives like the Cork LGBT Archive and the Irish Jesuit Archives, all the way to very large national organisations like the National Library of Ireland and the RTE Archives. On our website, if you're interested in sharing your collections, there is a page dedicated to that will help you understand the benefits of that in terms of promotion from reach and visibility, in terms of how the support we offer in terms of the statistics that you can get on usage, and other support around upskilling and training, like I mentioned with the Europeana Academy. But a really important part of this is not just the the part where we work with organizations, but also the part where we work with audiences. And I'm part of the audience engagement team in Europeana. We want to get people using this data, engaging with it, and really exploring it and using it as consumers. So we know that people reuse this data in a number of different fields. In creative industries, we know that people are using items from Europeana in games or using our API in a way to create different applications. In education, we know that people are using it for educational resources in classroom. In media, we know that people use them on websites. In research, we can see that people are researching huge corpuses of data. In storytelling, we do this a lot ourselves, and we see that a lot of people use the data from Europeana in a way to illustrate their stories. And in tourism, we can see that people are using it for a variety of different applications, and I'll talk about a few examples of each of those areas now. So for storytelling, we have on our own website, we have more than 1,000 stories where you can discover how the kind of stories behind the collection items. So discover inspiring people, remarkable places, and groundbreaking ideas illustrated by these cultural heritage items. These come from all around Europe, including Ireland. There's around 34 stories about Ireland, from the story of St. Bridget, which will be celebrated again on Sunday, to the Chalton Games, the Irish Olympics that took place at the early part of the 20th century. These break down into a number of different formats: online exhibitions, which are longer, multi-chapter kind of explorations of a topic; stories and blogs, which tend to be shorter and can be a variety of different things; and galleries, which are bringing together cultural heritage items. Our website is also published in the official 24 EU languages, so there's even stories in Irish, tá seacht scéal isteachad a scéalga. So there are 47 stories in Irish. This multilingual aspect is a relatively new part of our work over the last few years, but we're really working very well with a number of different ways to achieve this, including, for example, some internships and projects with University College Cork, which was my old university. One example also is of the kind of games that you can make with these is kind of spot the difference games. So if I change my slides, you will see that this image of the Halfpenny Bridge in Dublin, which comes from the National Library of Ireland, is changing. And on our website, there are some games and puzzles where people can work out what the difference is between these and a variety of other artworks. In education, we have a project called Build with Bits. This is an international program where participants design virtual environments. That could be anything from 360-degree spaces, immersive worlds, digital exhibitions, interactive storytelling exhibitions. It's quite a broad church of things. What we aim is that they have meaningful engagement with cultural heritage, education, and local challenges. So, for example, the version of Build with Bits that's running shortly looks at some examples from Greece and Cyprus. So more than 1,000 students have engaged with this program over the past number of years, building more than 25 different immersive spaces. We also have run media literacy workshops in the areas of zine making, collage, animation. We have done this with the European Youth Parliament when they had a meeting here in The Hague, actually, last year, with Crea Cultura, which is an event that takes place each year in Foligno in Italy. And another example is an event we did with Paris Collage Collective, obviously based in Paris. In the area of academia and research, we work very closely with the organization Daria and have a dedicated research community and do a lot of work to make sure that the access to this information is how researchers and academics want it to be, such as, for example, instead of providing item-based access, it's access to a whole data set. So we see an example here from a researcher from Belgium who used data from the Europeana API to develop a web application for her thesis in digital humanities. We also have organized and participated in hackathons using our API. So events where people come together over the course of a day or a number of days and create something new from the data, just essentially hacking it together in a very quick and simple way. And I think these are really, really valuable. Actually, they really show how people can very quickly take this data and make something new and often cool. My favorite example is the one in the middle, where it's a game where you just guess the date of when that photograph was taken. In the area of tourism, over the past year, we've worked with an organization called Thematic Travel to create walking tours in Amsterdam, in Dublin, in Gdansk, London, and Pisa. The idea of these is to reuse the data that's on Europeana, the images particularly. So for example, in Dublin, the tour is called Discover Dublin Statues, and it's an exploration of the centre of Dublin, looking at the statues that are on display there and what people and history they commemorate. And so we've got some nice feedback from that. And finally, we look at also a lot of creative reuse activities. So each year we have an annual animation competition called GIF It Up, which we run in partnership with a number of other organizations. Every year in May, there's an online event called the Digital Storytelling Festival, where we celebrate and share examples of great digital storytelling and hope to build capacity with particularly young professionals in this area. Similarly, following on from that, there's an online creative residency where young professionals get one-to-one support and mentorship to develop a number of different creative and digital projects. And we have a lot of online tutorials and resources on our site looking at animation, collage, jigsaws, puzzles, and much, much more. So if you wish to stay in touch with Europeana, we have mailing lists, like listservs related to each of the communities that I mentioned earlier. We also have an email newsletter. You can sign up on our website for that. If you're a member of the network, you will also get a dedicated newsletter each month. And our social media, we are on a number of platforms. That's a really important part for us too, to make sure that the content isn't just on our own website, but is actually going out into the world through social media and other platforms. So in 2025, that content was seen 575 million times, and our marketing emails were opened more than 200,000 times. So it's a really important part for us to make sure that we are not just speaking to our own website, but going out further into the world. So that was a very quick whistle-stop tour through a lot of what Europeana has done and is doing. There's a number of projects like Deploy Tour, which we are also involved in, that Rafik mentioned earlier, and other projects within the data space that I haven't really had time to mention. But hopefully, if you have any questions, I can take those now. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adrian. That was very comprehensive. Does anybody have any questions? Maybe they can raise their hands, or I can see if I can keep track of. I have one question, but I don't know if it's kind of fits in with the theme or not, but I'll throw it out there, and if you can answer, maybe not. So in this era where we're having a lot of issues, you know, in AI around deepfakes and artwork and everything being, you know, how does Europeana, what measures are you taking kind of against that, or you know, or when you're curating even artifacts, how can you, yeah. So I'm just curious what measures you're taking in that space, yeah.
Sure. It's a very complicated area, and it's always changing as well. I know that what we've done as an organization is that we've started to do a kind of consultation and discussions with the sector as to where their take on AI is, whether they want their collections data to be used by AI, to be scanned is not the right word, but for AI to harvest that. Also, when it comes to things like on our own website, we ask if anyone writing for us has used to declare if they have used AI in some way. It's never happened yet, I don't think. I think most people who are writing for us have a story that they want to tell themselves and really value the authenticity of that. But I know it's not just for us, it's within Creative Commons as well. It's a very big area of how much you make the data available, and then what are the ethical considerations of AI. So I think it's for now it's a lot of consultation and listening, and before we actually develop a hard position.
Okay, let me just see if I can unmute you there, Fionn. Yeah, you can talk now, Fionn, if you want to ask a question.
Hi, how's it going? Yeah, Fintan O'Donnell here. I'm in Dairylinks, but we're doing some work with the National Museum of Ireland at the moment. They basically want to get lots of open data up, and they 100% want to get on Europeana and things like that. But you know, it's kind of in varying levels of quality, and they need to find out. So God knows about addresses in Ireland and things like that. But so. Is it just as simple as it kind of, some people have different approaches. It's like ugly and early, just get it out there as quick as possible and kind of like pipe it in through the API and say, we're NMI and this is us. Or do you kind of expect like, you know, governance standards, metadata, good quality metadata, things like that before they put up? Basically, is there kind of a step-by-step people are expected to go through?
Yeah, I think the first step would be to, if you look at that share your collections page, that will have information there. I think there are standards for sure that we would expect. I don't think they're necessarily very, very high standards, but it also depends a little bit on your motivation, I think, as an organization. Are you wanting people to reuse this information, or is it simply that you want people to just find it and know that it exists? If it's more about the reuse side of things, then there are, I think, in general, then more higher quality sort of needs. As I mentioned, we have 4 different tiers, so it's quite broad for us because there are, when you work with 4,500 or whatever different organizations, the variety is going to be there. It's always going to be hugely variable, from people who just want you to have a tiny little thumbnail all the way to people who want to give you a 6,000 megapixel amazing image of a painting. So I don't think we set too high standards, but at the same time, for our website now, there's a lower standard of what does get displayed on the site. So it's the more tier 2 and above rather than the lower quality stuff. I think the earliest thing is probably to look at that share your collections page and start to have a conversation either with us or as it's a museum in this case, or a big gallery. It might be more with a particular aggregator who could give some kind of bespoke advice.
Sorry, an aggregator?
Yes, the aggregators are the kind of, I don't want to call them the warehouses in case any of them are listening, but they are kind of the warehouses of Europeana, where to bring the data into our website and into our data space, we work with aggregators in across Europe. So there's around 40 different organizations. They have that one-to-one relationship within their own country, let's say. So within Ireland, the Digital Repository of Ireland are the aggregator for Ireland, but it may also be, in this instance, as a gallery, that it might work with Museo, which are a museum aggregator. So they're the ones who kind of can really give you bespoke advice, particularly on how the best way to achieve this would be.
Great. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, so Daphne, you raised your hand there. You can speak.
Thanks. Yeah, I have one question. I'm Daphne from Insight and UCD. How searchable is it? Like, if I put in something like, I don't know, cholera, am I going to get back text, pictures, everything that I want around that search term?
Yes, yeah, you'll get all of the above. Text, anything that has the word cholera in its metadata somewhere. So that could be as a subject, or it could be in a sort of a description. When you do that search, then you can use filters that are on the website on the right hand side to say, I only want to see images or text or audio or 3D or whatever it might be. You can also filter by the country that this comes from. You can filter by the license that it uses, and a variety of other filters. I won't go through every single one of them, but there's a lot of filters that help you kind of find more specifically what you want, because sometimes a very broad search term can mean you get millions or a lot of objects or items.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So Rafiq had his hand up there.
Yeah. Adrian, I have a couple of questions. Just to let you know, We Insight is closely working with Europeana on technology level as well. A quick question is, but we are not aware of the governance aspect, how you maintain the ownership of data, how Europeana maintains it. Imagine that somebody is publishing, the data on Europeana. So how do you ensure that the data ownership goes to the data provider, right? So, and the second point is that what are the contractual sort of, obligation the data consumer has to comply with?
Okay, well, firstly, I'll say in audience engagement, we don't necessarily deal too much with governance and ownership, but my understanding is that the data exchange agreement will cover that. So if it's an organization that are sharing their data with Europeana, the ownership and governance, so on, is part of the data sharing, the data exchange agreement. Within that, I do know that we ask for metadata to be licensed as CC0 so that it's available for anyone to use. But that means that we don't own that ourselves. I think the ownership stays with the organization that are sharing their data. And can you say the second question for me again?
Yeah, the second question was, how do you ensure that the data consumer is not sort of abusing the data? So is there any kind of traceability that Europeana is in place? I mean, that's the question, yeah.
That's a much more tricky area, I think, because data is shared with a particular license. So if it's public domain, in theory, anyone can do anything with that data or that item, if it's a painting, let's say. It's very hard to trace that as well. Once it goes online, it's hard to know how exactly, it can be used. So we've seen examples, not that this is bad, but of things being downloaded from our website and added to Wikimedia Commons because it's public domain data and it's going to a website that lots of people are using and updating. I know that there's a very large ethical proportion to this as well, elements to this too, because a lot of museum items particularly can be very close to communities, can be sacred, can be very important for communities, and they may not want to see those used in ways that might be disrespectful or be just downright incorrect, let's say. So I know that we're involved in a number of projects around that to explore this area. So there's one called Debias, which is about which was working to eliminate or work with harmful language in museum metadata. So in the past, ways of describing objects was not as ethical or not as correct, I would say, as it could be. And so Tobias was looking at ways that we have that so that people can report this information, or it can be sort of pre-screened out as well. We're also involved in another project called DigiCare or DigiCare. Or DigiShare. No one's quite sure what the actual pronunciation of this is, but it's looking at if items are being reused, how is that ethically being done with communities' involvement or with communities' sort of blessing, let's say. So I think it's a growing area, and it's one that we look at as we're involved in these projects. But it's hard to give a very simple answer to that question, I think.
Adrian, not to delay too long, but just a quick follow-on question from that. I mean, so quite a few academics listen to these webinars and all. And you've mentioned some really nice projects there that Europeana are involved in. How would academics, if you wanted to, like, for example, even like Tobias there, we'd have quite a bit of expertise in that space here in Galway, and some of the other things that you mentioned there earlier. How would an academic get involved in those types of projects with Europeana? Is there usually a call put out, or how does that work?
Yeah, it depends really on the specifics of what you mean by getting involved. But in terms of being a partner in those projects, they tend to be large EU-funded projects, which come through the streams of Creative Europe, of Horizon, and of the Data Space for Cultural Heritage funding. When it comes to more specific, like getting involved on a practical level, I think each project runs in a slightly different way and has their own aims and goals and objectives, and the involvement can vary. But I think probably the simplest way I could say right now is to join our network, and then you'll be receiving our communication and seeing where those where those opportunities are. I think that's probably the quickest and easiest way I can say with that, particularly if it's around the area of academia and research, to join the research community within that network. That's the sort of easiest and quickest answer I can give, I think.
And would the same probably go then for the public sector and any of the cultural heritage bodies here in Ireland? Oh,
yeah.
Okay, that's superb. That's fantastic, Adrian. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands raised. No. Okay. Well, we have a recording of this, so we'll be putting the recording on our DSAI website. And if anybody has any follow-on questions, we can link you into Adrian if you're amenable to that. And
yes, of course.
Okay. Thank you for your time, Adrian, and hopefully we'll see you in Ireland or Cork or Europe sometime soon. And we don't. Oh, sure, you might come to our event later on in September.
Never know.
Yeah, never know. Be a good excuse home as well. So yeah. Lovely meeting you today. And again, thanks for your time, and thanks Rafiq and Ed for the intro. Yeah.
Super. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.